Okay, now a word about woodworm. The faker's wood holes are drilled or forced into the wood surface using an awl, whereas the woodworm chews its way out. A female woo boring beetle enters a crevice in the wood, loose joint, etc., or bores just subsurface and injects her microscopic eggs, and the larva that hatches burrows around and about the wood, generally along the grain, more often than around the joints internally, where the use of sweet hide glue abides, thus creating extensive tunnels. Only when it is matured to a beetle does it eat its way out, and only does a hole appear on the wood surface. Woodworms do not eat a path or in a straight line, or make holes that are perfectly round. Only drills do that. Use a needle to probe the wood holes. Probing will lead straight into a drilled hole, possibly going deep and coming to an abrupt stop. If the needle barely enters the wood and starts to take an abrupt turn, you know a worm was once there. Also, under magnification, you can determine if the hole is round. These worms were called powder post beetles. They still may be in the antiques today, coming via Europe. And once you have been known to infest objects for over 75 years. They really enjoy maple, beech, walnut, but not quite mahogany. Fakers make it a habit of using old, wood-eaten wood, but in the reworking process, by surface planing, they expose the tunnels on the surface. This is a dead giveaway. Worms never eat along the surface. This is always suspect. New wormholes are, of course, light and may still contain powder. It is the same color and consistency as the face wood. Old holes are dark and sometimes filled with what was. Novice collectors may deem woodworm holes evidence of antiquity. Savvy collectors see no proof of age, but instead a probability of structural weakness. A modest blow can crumble affected wood. Woodworm is difficult to eradicate, even with the help of a professional exterminator, a fumigation chamber, and lethal chemicals. Acquiring an eye and expertise. A trained eye can be built out of the initial response to an object. A connoisseur is literally one who knows. That's our definition, one who knows. And the term is used for anyone with scholarly and aesthetic expertise in the arts. A true connoisseur can illuminate an object with a wide range of knowledge and critical thinking and judgments about its authorship, date, the society which produced it, and its use, especially if it is an object from the decorative arts, the history of its ownership, the location of its related works, and an assessment of its quality and condition. He may even know the market price. Thus, a good eye is one that is backed up by knowledge, extensive knowledge, and extensive scholarly research. Supported by a good visual memory is also a great help, and independent enough to make individual judgments and fresh observations. An eye which has no scholarship to control its waywardness often makes careless errors of an elementary nature. And an eye which has its independent sensitivity smothered by too much undigested knowledge often fails to notice the unexpected or to see things that have been overlooked. There are no shortcuts to developing an eye. And contrary to the belief of many young students of the arts, it cannot be done by simply sitting in a library reading books and looking at photographs. Too many people today feel this is the way to learning. In a room, for example, you might begin by attempting to date pieces to the nearest century, then attempt to give each piece a nationality. As your expertise develops, you can increase the difficulty of the questions. What was its use? What was the style or style of? What is the wood? What is the correct terminology for this or that decorative feature? What is the date to the nearest decade? Are there signs of restoration or alteration? Does it have the characteristics of a particular maker or designer? Is it a good example of one in different design or quality? If you're a genuine beginner or tyro, start your eye on the best pieces. Not only are the great makers more exciting visually, they are the ones who establish the cheap prototypes from which the others are learned. They give you a feel of real quality, and they give you the chronological framework into which the others fit. An auction room is one of the best places to develop an eye, and certainly an ideal place to try to refine it. There is a continual changing display of objects. It is very important to gain a thorough understanding of techniques of production and the basic materials which are used by the artist and craftsman. Knowing what techniques were available to a particular time or place or craftsman is of the greatest possible help in identifying objects correctly. And of course, detecting fakes and or forgeries, many of which contain techniques or materials incompatible with the supposed identity of the piece in question. The second reason for understanding techniques is aesthetic. Much aesthetic is pleasure, and this can be gained by understanding how well an artist or craftsman manipulates his materials within its natural limitations and the limits of his craft, and how well he marries design and ideas with the available materials at hand. The authenticator with a good eye is often able to recognize quality, and even though he cannot immediately identify or date and place the object or work of art in question, be suspicious of the experts who will only make a judgment on quality when they have discovered only who the artist or craftsman is. Finally, do not fail or fall into the trap of thinking that the be-all or the end-all of expertise is the ability to provide the correct name and date. A true expert will reach such a conclusion only with caution, and only after simulating, assessing, and enjoying all the other qualities of which the object presents. A basic knowledge of art history is essential for the well-informed collector. And of course, many collectors are considerable scholars in their own right. Most serious writing about the visual arts is now undertaken by people with an academic art history qualification. A successful researcher must always be critical and unwilling to accept anything without good evidence and good reason. Patience and persistent in searching for information and unraveling the many problems that one runs across. Attentive to detail and scrupulous in checking facts. Dispassionate in argument and honest in admitting mistakes or accepting unwelcome conclusions. Just remember, no faker, forger, or copier can reproduce, however, is the state of mind under which the original artist worked. They do not know the state of mind the original artist worked. They can only intimate a style or mannerism. They cannot create it. Shrinking wood. The wooden furniture represents or presents proof of passage of time by changing its size and times shape also. Having been composed originally mostly of wood dries out over the years and shrinks. When originally built, most furniture contained a moisture content of about 20%. The porous material over time loses this moisture, intracellular, and about 85% then, if it is in a stable and consistent environment, will begin to lose the intracellular moisture in the cell walls, the final loss of moisture. At this point, the wood is almost in a petrified state. with little or no movement. But if the old piece of furniture is near a moist area, its porous cells will absorb or expand in width only. Most of pieces shrinkage occurs in the first 75 to 100 years, and then it just responds to seasonal humidity fluctuations. A shrunk piece will never regain its original constructed dimensions. This can be seen in tabletops where they're no longer round or square. Ball and claw feet and turnings have been somewhat square. Shrinkage also becomes apparent in a top of a table where the large board has contracted, leaving the ends, which were originally cut into the match, still full length and now protruding.